Hello everyone, and welcome to Art Untutored, where you'll find tutorials and samplings of paints and all kinds of fun crafty things. Today I'm opening up a Christmas present I got, and it is the Roman Szmal Aquarius set and the classic set and 3 other ones, just because I really like the colors. So we're going to unwrap these right now. I'm really excited about these. These are paints coming from Poland, and so they're not common here in the United States. I've been seeing them a lot online on YouTube. This is the classic paint. So we have lemon yellow, Aquarius red, ultramarine light, Aquarius green, and cap mortem. So what I liked about the Roman Szmal colors was that they use a lot of pigments that are unusual to traditional watercolor painting, or ones that are not used so much in your traditional sets that you buy online. Oh, look, they're wrapped like candy. So let's get these unwrapped. These are hand poured, and they have honey in their paint, so it keeps them on the moist side, and that's why there's a nice little wax wrapping over the top. Now, like I said, I've been waiting a while to finally buy these. Mostly because I had to order them. I ordered them through Jackson's Art Supplies in the UK. Their US warehouse doesn't carry these. And then after I'm through unwrapping everything, we're going to do some swatching, which is my favorite thing to do, is to swatch colors. So after I unwrap the set, I'm actually going to stop the video to unwrap the other box, because otherwise we'll just be here unwrapping paints all day, and that's no fun for anybody. So pretty. You can definitely tell that they're hand poured paints by the irregularities on them. And I will see you back in a minute. Alright, so I finally have this one out of the wrapper. I don't have the paints unwrapped yet, but I thought we'd show the unboxing. So we have a nice slider box. Now, the one thing I will say that I noticed when I unwrapped the other set was that the paint colors are not marked on the pans, so I'm going to have to go back and mark everything on the pan. I have a tendency to remove things from the palettes, and just to keep everything nice. Ooh. So their swatch card inside of the box is some nice watercolor paper. And everything is already unwrapped in this set. So what I'm going to do is, I got 3 other colors, and I am going to add them to this set. As soon as I push them all over. And like I said, they did not mark the pans with the color. So to keep things straight, I will go back later and make some labels to put on them. And I'll probably rearrange these paints a little bit too. The individual pans, and this is so fun, the wrapping on the individual pans, this is actually watercolor. It's not a print on it. If you wet it, it'll re-wet and smear all over the place. But I think that's really, you know, one of the endearing qualities about the Roman Szmal paints is that you know that everything is hand done. I can't wait to see how these compare to some of my other paints. I do have the Winsor Newton Pro, Daniel Smith, Rosa Art. I'm probably more of a paint collector than I am an actual painter. So I can't wait to compare it to some of the other ones in later videos. This one is just about unboxing and swatching of this set. And I can't wait to try this one out. So some of these colors are have more than one pigment in them, and depending on the pigments that are mixed, they can separate, which leads to some really beautiful granulation and patterns, and they're great for doing backgrounds and things of that sort. So there we go. So this is the Roman Szmal, and it is the Andrzej I know I'm butchering this name, Gosik set. If you can see if we can't get that in focus. Oh, I'm so sorry. This is my first video, so it doesn't look like I'm gonna get it in focus. And it says it right here on the top. And it's a particular set that, let's see if we can get a good, there we go. So that's the set. And this is my first video, so you'll have to excuse some of the slowness of doing things and maybe not articulating what I mean to say first time around, or mispronouncing things, which I'm also dyslexic, so that doesn't help either. But I'm going to grab the paints, and I've already made some, I've already stamped out some cards ahead of time to swatch on, and we'll get started on that. I had to pause there for a second. So I'm looking at this, and I know I can't stand working with this bottom palette piece on there, so that is definitely going to get removed here. I always find these get in the way, so I'm just going to pull this pin and drop it in there so it doesn't get lost. And there we go, that's better. Alright, the first color we have is Mineral Violet. This is one of the ones I was talking about that has more than one pigment in it. It is PB29 and PB19. And for those of you who don't necessarily who aren't necessarily into pigments, that would be PB19 is a quinacridone magenta, and PB29 is ultramarine. So there's our mass tone, and nice pretty purple. This will probably split up into two colors, so we'll probably get blue and a nice magenta pink. Which, like I said, sometimes the two-tone ones, depending on what pigments were actually used in it, they may separate, and that's something done intentionally. So that is the Mineral Violet by Roman Szmal, and we will let that dry and we'll take a look at it when we're done. The next one is Autumn Green, and this one has a triple pigment in it. So we have PG26, PY150, and PR122. So our mass tone, we should get a nice sap looking green, and when we wet it we should see some separation. This is a very, very pretty green, and this will be good for foliage for sure. And it's got that nice staining yellow undertone. Now, the watercolor paper that I'm using to swatch these is just the cheap 7x5 quartered, and that gives you a basically like a trading card size. It's what I use for just for swatching. Whenever I actually do a painting, I typically do it on a better, more quality paper, unless I'm just playing around. If I'm just playing around with colors, I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of money on good paper. So you can already see the yellow tones coming out from this green. It'll be interesting to see how that looks when it dries. Next we have quinacridone gold. Now these are the three colors that I bought separate. I didn't buy them in the set. They were the three individual colors, and they were ones that I saw and thought I would like. I'm really into granulating colors, and by granulating I mean colors that separate. So I don't really expect this one to separate, but we shall see. And I love a good yellow color that goes all the way into the gold shade, because it's great for doing sunsets, or if you need something where you need a deeper color, where you can fade it out really well, which means if you have something going from light to dark, you can do it all in one color, and you still get that depth and shadowing, which is really nice. So I mean, look how pretty that is. where I'm going to have to put an X on this table to see where my hands are, because I see I keep rolling off to the edge of the table. Sorry. So, in case you're wondering about the name of the channel, it's Art Untutored because I am not a trained artist. I have not gone to school for art. I went to school for other things. But I've always loved art as a hobby. It has always been something I do to relax myself, something that I like to do just to figure out things. And that's why I'm really into the pigments, because I really like to know the way things work. So for me, the pigments are, I see I've got my paints in backwards. So we're going backwards in the set because I didn't plan that out. But the good part about that is, first ones are easy to reach. So this is Shadow Violet Light. It is also a 3-color paint. It has three pigments in it. The same thing with this one. Anytime you have PB29, you usually get some sort of granulation, because PB29 granulates really well on its own. And like I said, PB29 is ultramarine blue. And it really granulates a lot just on its own. So I make swatch cards like this because I have them in a folder. And I'll probably show you the folder on the next video, because I actually have another set of paints to swatch. Christmas was good this year. So I have a folder, and I put these cards in there like you would put trading cards, baseball cards, Pokemon cards. But I have my colors, and I have them done by their pigments and what color, like what hues they are. And the reason why I do that is because when I'm making up a palette to paint, not every sap green is the same color. I do have my favorites. Not every magenta is the same color. So I have certain magentas that might work better with what I'm working on. So what I'll do is I will pull colors according to what color they are. Wow, this thing has a lot of separation on it. So I'll pull colors according to what I'm working on and not pay attention to the brand. It'll just basically be whatever color works with what I'm doing, and not so much the brand. So when I make my palette, when I'm working on something particular, you'll find they have Daniel Smith and Rose Art and White Knights and Winsor Newton. It just really depends on what color I need at the time. So that was my other reason why I really need to get these paints labeled, because I know at some point I will be working on a project and I will absolutely want to put some of these in with what I'm doing. These paints are gorgeous and they move so well. They move so well, like butter. Like, I've never seen a cobalt blue quite this color. It's a nice deep cobalt. I mean, this will be excellent for me doing skies. And cobalt is a granulating color, even though it's a single pigment. Most of your cobalts are like the aquamarine, in that they granulate. The cobalts I don't find granulate as much as the aquamarine, but we shall see. I mean, I'm saying aquamarine, but it's ultramarine. Like I said, first video, expect mistakes, but I'm okay with that. So you can already see the granulation in it. So you can see that the pigment is kind of separating out. And the good thing about that is if you're making a sky, typically paints that granulate like this usually lift very well. So when you're making a sky, it's easy to lift color for your clouds. So I'll just like take a piece of paper napkin and blot off some of the areas and to make the clouds. And these paints are absolutely gorgeous. I wasn't sure about the brand on a whole because it's an unknown brand to me. But I mean, it did not take long to see that these are really nice watercolors. And you get a lot. These are full pans and not half pans. And normally the ones I get are half pans. I tend to make smaller paintings, so I don't use a lot of paint. So typically I don't get full pans, but these paints come as full pans. And honestly, for full pans, they are half the price of most quality paints. So they're really reasonably priced. This is Ultramarine Intense. So ultramarine is definitely a granulating color. The nice thing about ultramarine is also if you're doing cloud work with ultramarine, it'll lift fairly easy. And it mixes, like if you want to make your own granulating colors, it's a good color for a lot of granulating mixes because it granulates so well. There are different shades of ultramarine, and I will say when they say intense, this is like super bright. So I don't know if I've said this, but swatching is like one of my favorite things to do. I'm a bit analytical sometimes, so to me having the color swatches there and being able to organize them or just see what they look like and not necessarily having that pressure of actually painting something is kind of nice because you're still moving paint around. You don't always have to make a picture. You don't always have to do something that's beautiful or you know, embrace the imperfect, because I make a lot of stuff just to make it and not necessarily, oh, I'm you know, I want this to be sellable or something like that, because to be honest, I give away most of my stuff. I really don't sell anything. I guess maybe one day in the future that may be a thing, but right now I'm perfectly content at making art for the sake of just making it, and it doesn't always have to be pretty. And this is phthalo blue, red shade. Now your phthalos tend to be staining colors. So if I were doing, like I said, if you were doing a sky, I would not recommend doing it in phthalo blue because you are not going to be able to lift clouds on it once that color's down. I mean, it's a beautiful color. It's great for mixing. I do love the intensity of phthalo, but you just need to be aware that with this color, this kind of blue, it may not be the easiest paint if you are doing something where you're lifting the watercolor up. It's always gonna stain. But look how gorgeous that is. It's beautiful. Now, the good thing about your phthalo is that, unlike, I'm going to show you the ultramarine. You see all the grains in it, the granulation that has happened where the pigment has separated from the water. I mean, it's still drying. Your phthalos won't do that. If you want a single, you know, like if you want a color to just be that color, like running a marker across something, then phthalos are excellent for that. This paper is not so much good at showing that. Typically when I paint, I like to use a hot press paper. It's a smoother paper, and it usually doesn't bend like these cards do. And like I said, these cards are they're just swatch cards. And so with the swatch cards, I pretty much, like that says, pretty much with the swatch cards, they're for just my use of organizing things. And so I don't invest the money in doing that maybe on paper that is expensive. I think these are on my Amazon auto ship. It's a 5x7 watercolor paper, and it's a pack of 100 pieces for like under $5. And they're perfect for this because I can just quarter them and it makes them the size that I need for them to be. So I'm kind of miffed by this one because you know, your PB15s are your phthalos, and they're usually intense and very dark, and this is a very light colored phthalo. So I'm going to say this one too is a, even though PB15-3 is very prolific in that almost every company puts this in their paint, this color in their paint set, the PB15-3. But this is not the usual color. It's normally not this color. It normally looks more like the last one I did, which was PB15-6. So I just find that really unique. I'm looking at my water and I can tell I've been through some of the phthalo paints already because my water is definitely, it's blue. It's blue water. So this is definitely an interesting take on the blue, and with it being in single pigment, you know, you would think that there's white in it, but if there were white in it, then you would lose a lot of your, you wouldn't be as translucent. You would be more opaque if there were white in it. Your whites tend to be a lot more opaque in the paint set. They're usually like titanium whites. I mean, this paint, this color seems to move around more like a cobalt than a phthalo. So we'll see if that granulates out. That would be weird if it did, because that's not normal for a PB15 in any range. So next is phthalo turquoise, so just straight PB16. Oh, that's a pretty color. So it's definitely on the teal side for sure. And if you're wondering about why the paint's not working its way real good, it's not the paints, it's definitely the paper. So when you're going to do a nicer watercolor, something you might want to save, there's a reason why you put it on better paper. The better paper works works better. Basically, you can wet the paper and it doesn't just stay on top. It soaks into the paper and your paper will stay wet for a longer amount of time. With this paper, it does, you know, like I said, it is what it is. It's just for basically swatching or whenever I have kids over, or sometimes I will take some of my older watercolor colors, which, like I said, I have a tendency to collect watercolors and pigments. So when I get too many of them, I make bundles and give them away in my local community. So there's always kids, you know, that might not be able to afford paints or, you know, watercolor paper. So when I end up with a little bit too much, then I just like bundle stuff up and, like I said, let them go out into the community. So next we have Perylene Green Deep. And the Perylene Green already on its own is a very dark color. So this is probably going to be more black than green. In fact, the pigment is a black pigment. It's PBK 32. So it is considered a black pigment. So when it goes down, like right now, I'm not wet enough on the paint. I didn't pick up enough paint. Like if you look at the color of the paint itself, it looks black. If you had it sitting next to pans of black paint, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference without putting it on paper, because it is very dark, and it's meant to be very dark. I mean, it's great for dark foliage. If you add just a little bit of a dark blue to it, then you get the really darkness of it. So very deep green. This is actually one of my favorite color greens. I like to do a lot of greenery. I like to do a lot of landscapes, and that is a really nice foresty color. The next we have Hooker's Green. So this is PY 150 and PB 27. I like that this palette has quite a few greens in it. So in the comments, if there's any other things you would like for me to maybe showcase or make a video on, like papers or the other paint palettes, I guess eventually I will do the other paint palettes as well. But I figured since these were new paints, I would share them with you when I open them myself. So this is a very pretty mid-tone green. I gotta make sure I don't grab the wrong paint. Now, it's very similar. In fact, the colors are very similar to the autumn green, which has mostly dried, except for I don't really expect a whole lot of granulation out of the hooker's green. I don't think, in fact, I don't think it's going to granulate at all. I think it's just more of a pure mix. Whereas the autumn green has really separated out to this nice color green and the yellow. So if you're doing foliage, you don't want to spend a lot of time having to dot everything in there. Something like this works great. Then you can paint your other things on top of it in the darker colors. But that one separated out really nice. And so did this one, the Shadow Violet Light, which that's one that's in the set. Like, look how nice that looks. You got your beautiful violets, and then you have this pop of pink behind it. Now this one's very similar, it's just a brighter violet. So with this one, you get more of the shadowy part of it, and this one is definitely more of the brighter colors. So next we have Sap Green. PY 110 and PG 7. Now PG 7 is a really nice green. It's a very bright green, and it's typical of what you find in a lot of sets. You'll usually find PG 7. In fact, this set actually has a PG 7 along as well. It's intense, it's staining, so they've probably put a lot of yellow in this to tone it down, because the PG 7 goes a long way when you're painting. It's a very very intense pigment, for sure. And PG 7, like your phalos, PG 7 just, it is the ultimate stainer. Like when I'm mixing paints, because I like to make my own paints, and when I'm mixing paints, one of the things I always notice is that anytime I use PG 7, it stains the brushes, it stains the table, it stains whatever I've touched with it, it stains my hands. I mean, just everything. It's just one of those very staining pigments. So this one too, it's like, it looks similar to the autumn green, and it looks similar to the hooker's green, but it's a lighter mass tone, has more yellow in it. And like I said, as far as green colors for foliage, this set has a lot of really nice green colors for foliage. And now the phthalo green blue shade, PG 7, which is like the bane of my existence when it comes down to paint colors, because it's gonna stain this paintbrush. It's gonna stain the paintbrush to no end. It's pretty though. I mean, it is definitely your emerald green for sure. Even that little bit has already stained the water green. ocean blue. This was one of the ones that, had it not been in the set, I definitely would have purchased on its own. It is PR24, which is a brown pigment, and PB153, which is a phthalo blue. I am a blue person, and this blue is so pretty. That is definitely a deep peacock colored blue. So this is also should be a granulating paint, so I expect to see some separation going on in there. And if you were intending separation, if you want your paints to separate and they're, you know, they have the right pigments in them, you definitely have to use a lot of water. If you just put them on there all heavy, you'll never get the separation colors out of it. So we'll see what that one looks like when it goes, but I can already see the yellow or the brown separating from the blue. That is gorgeous. That definitely has an ocean vibe to it. And like I said, don't blame the paints whenever they get all squirrely. It is the paper. The next color is Cobalt Sea Blue. It is PB28. And usually with the cobalt, you'll see some granulation. One of my favorite combinations is a nice cobalt blue like this, and another pigment called Potter's Pink. And when you add a little bit of Potter's Pink to it, and then you let it water out, you water it down, it gives you a nice granulation that looks like a snow-capped mountain with just hints of rocks peeking through. And I think Daniel Smith has a mixture, and so does Schmincke. They have a mixture of nice cobalt blue with Potter's Pink. And you think Schmincke's calls it glacier blue. So this, you could see the granulation right away on it. Next is Hematite Violet. PR102. And I think I grabbed the wrong color. I did. I grabbed the mineral violet because I dropped those other paints in there. I am glad they had extra slots. because I know this will be a brand I will probably buy more of. There were other colors that Jackson's was sold out of that when they get them back in stock I will probably purchase. So this is definitely a very dark. That's very dark. Like, very dark. Oh my gosh. I didn't think to put that much on the paintbrush. Let's put some water mixed in there. I mean, look at that. I do expect this one to granulate, and I think this is very similar to a Potter's Pink as well. So if you could imagine that light blue mixed with a little bit of this, just to give you that grain, and the colors, instead of totally mixing, they actually will granulate out and separate from one another. So it's kind of fun how they'll take a pigment, and how the pigment is processed sometimes will dictate what color that the pigment ends up as. Um, so you could have another PR 102 and it may not be the same exact color as this. So PR 101, Indian red. So just like PR 102, PR 101, also there are many varieties of PR 101. They're not all this color. So this is very similar to the hematite violet. It's very similar, but instead of having the brown undertones, it definitely has more of a red undertone to it. Just like the other one, these are earth pigments. So earth pigments are things like your ochres and things like that that are made out of clays. They're made out of, you know, literally dirt. So they tend to be more opaque, as you can tell. That's the reason why I have the flower stamped on there, is so I can see, you know, like how translucent the color is. Because you have like these phalos, and you can see right through them. And then you'll have that, and then once that dries, you probably won't be able to see much of that. Transparent brown, PR23. I love that these paints re-wet real quick, which that's normal with honey paints that have honey in them and aren't just gum arabic. Some of my favorite paints are also M-gram paints, and the M-gram paints have a lot of honey in them compared to other brands. Honey really makes it easy for you to be able to re-wet your paints. It keeps them moist. So one of my problems with M-gram paints is I typically buy tubes and then I put them in the pans myself and let them dry. The M-gram paints take forever to dry because they do have so much honey in them. The more honey you have, you can get to the point literally to where the paint's just really not going to dry. And that's one of the reasons why, since they have honey in them, these do have a bit of a glossy color to them. And that is from the honey. But most your high quality paints, it's more normal to find honey. Honey's a more expensive ingredient, so not every paint has it. And that is probably my Amazon device telling me that we are expecting a snowstorm, because we are expecting a snowstorm. So this next color is burnt sienna. It's Mont Amada. I may not be pronouncing that right. So basically, it's another earth tone, and with the earth tones, depending on how it's processed, or maybe the oxidation of the clay or whatnot, you end up with different colors, or different colors can come from different regions. So with this one, it's a burnt sienna, but because it's from this particular region, it's a different color. Now, the one thing I love about Roman Szmal, whenever I was looking into getting these paints, is, like me, he is a person that is invested in pigments. And from what I know, his career was in the paint pigments. So he knows a lot about them. So we'll find pigment colors in his paints that you won't find in a lot of the other paints, because that's just what he does. And I like that about it, because it gives you some unique colors. So right now I'm not filling out the rest of the information on the card, which this is granulation, transparency, staining, and light fast. The light fast information I will have to look up. It wasn't particularly, like, these weren't even wrapped, so there's no light fast information on those. I'm pretty sure that one of the things about his paints as well is that they tend to be light fast. So I will still have to look up the information and get them on the cards. And the reason why you want to have light fast information is if by chance you are deciding to paint something and you're painting it to be displayed, you don't want those paints to fade if they happen to be, partially near a window or anything like that. So you want something that's light fast. When you're playing around with paints or journaling and things like that, then light fast is not so much of an issue. I mean, there are some colors that are inherently less light fast than others. There are certain reds that are not light fast at all. I mean, you put them in the sun one day and they've done faded. So that's something to be aware of if you're going to paint and hang it up and display it, is that light fastness might be something that's important. And you will find that your artist grade paints are usually not as light fast as your professional paints. So when you go to pick out a paint palette to buy, that might be one of the things you look at, is how light fast are the colors. And it's also nice to have the pigment information, because if you have the pigment information, you pretty much will have the light fast information as well, because they're, like I said, certain pigments just aren't very light fast to begin with. This is PR 101, which is transparent oxide brown. So the next color is Venetian Yellow Earth. Now the thing about some of the earth colors is that they don't, the pigment is very washed out. That's how it appears. It's usually not very intense, especially the green. If you get a green, like a rare green earth or something like that, the colors are not, or terra verde, the colors just are not very saturated, and that's just inherent to what they actually are. This one is very much like a yellow ochre, so it's not too bad. But I've had other ones that just, they're just so pastel-y. You would think that there was white mixed in with it, but it's not. It's just the way that the pigment itself is. So this reminds me of a yellow ochre, but it's it's on the brighter side. It's on the more yellow side. So really nice. So quinacridone magenta, PR 122. In this color too, it's very bright. So in itself, I mean, I do a lot of landscape. It's not something I would use on its own because of how intensely bright it is. But when you're mixing colors, your magentas, you got to kind of look at it like a printer cartridge. So when you look at a printer cartridge, your cartridge, it's not red, blue, and yellow. It is magenta, cyan, and yellow. So that's why your quinacridone or your PR 122 usually makes a very good basic mixing color. Because if I need red and I have this color and no red in my palette, I can literally mix a little bit of yellow with it and it will make red. So it's a very versatile color. That, and if you like pink, it is definitely pink. It is bright pink. Next we have Pyrrole Red. Which usually this color is like close to a fire engine red. When you think of, you know, the old school fire engine, like toy fire engine red, I mean, it is your basic red. But if you're doing a color wheel, you would use the magenta and not the red, because you'll never be able to make magenta out of this red, but you can make this red out of the magenta. So this is PR 254. Very, very red. And these paints are so smooth. So smooth. So I'm trying to fade it a little bit so I can see what the lighter or washed out color of it, the watered down color of it is. That red was definitely very intense. Next we have Permanent Alizarin Crimson PR 176. I would have to look up the pigment type in the light fastness, because if there's going to be one color in the set that isn't light fast, it's probably going to be this one. But it's a very beautiful color. It's definitely a more pinky red. Maybe a little more intense. But definitely not the fire engine red. This will have the pink undertone, so so the other thing about the alizarin crimson is it's not easy to get off the paintbrush. And I am certainly running out of space here. The next color is Transparent Pyrrole Orange. So it is PO71. That is a nice looking orange. Kind of reminds me of fall. Next is one of my favorite yellows. It's a nickel azo yellow, and in the pan the color looks a bit, can I say brown, muddy, but when you paint it, it definitely waters out to very intense, bright, beautiful yellow. So that's one of the reasons why I love this color, because it just goes so deep and then turns into this beautiful, intense yellow. So that is PY50. And our last color in this group is Quinifalone Yellow, PY138. So this will be another one of those unique colored yellows. Typical palette will have, it may have the nickel azo yellow, which is the PY150, or something similar to the PY150. It'll usually have like a lemon yellow, which I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head for lemon yellow. And it really depends on the company and what they're naming. So this is PY138. So it's almost like a lemon yellow, but it's brighter than it's a little more intense than a lemon yellow. My water is starting to get really dirty. Excuse me. Fair warning, I am a sneezer. And usually when I sneeze 5, 6 times before I stop. Having to stack some of these drier ones to lay that out. So we're finished with this set, plus the 3 extras that I bought. So I'm going to move these over. And I'm going to grab the small set. And the small set here was so reasonably priced. It's like $15 American. And it's 5 full palettes. And they're pretty good colors. So it definitely give you a basic start. There's lemon yellow, which we just mentioned lemon yellow, so PY61. Aquarius red, which the Aquarius colors these are pretty much unique to Roman Szmal, because he uses pigments that most other people are not using. in their paints. Aquamarine Light, Aquarius Green, and Cap Mortem. So PR 102, we had a PR 102, and we will compare the two colors whenever I'm done getting the paint on the paper. Now, it doesn't come in a tin, it just comes in a cardboard box, but the pallets are the same as if you would buy them as singles. I'm going to pause for 1 minute, and I'm going to go change this water out because it's really bad. Alright, I am back with some clean water. Yeah, that was getting kind of, that water was getting kind of muddy there. We're back in business now. So it looks like this PR 102 is more red than the other one. The other one is more purple. But we'll see once we get some more paint on here. So we'll see when that dries. This was our other 102, which was Hematite Violet. So its separation definitely gives you that purple undertone on it. So this is a granulating color, and that granulation color is very purple. I think this granulation color is definitely going to be red and not purple, even though their pigment colors are the same. And it just means that the pigment was processed a little different, and that's one of the reasons why when you buy several different palettes of paints, your pigment colors may be exactly the same as another brand's paints, and none of the colors are going to look exactly the same because they're all processed a little bit different from one another. And so usually you can tell the differences. Some of them, the differences can be like huge. I know the PR 102s and PR 101s, there's a lot of variation of those colors. A lot of your earth colors, there's a lot of variations of the colors as well. So this is the Aquarius Green, which was another one I was looking forward to trying out. This is PY 150, PR 25, and PB 29. So I expect to see some good granulation going on in this one. Which personally, I love a good granulating green for sure. Especially the greens and the browns, because they're good for if you're doing the side of a mountain and you don't want to sit there and paint every little dot on them. That granulation definitely gives you the texture that you need to make it look more organic and not flat. And it does it all on its own, which is the nice part about it. I mean, you can move the pigment around to get it to granulate where you want it to granulate. And you figure that out once you've worked with, a color for a while, played around with it. You'll be able to tell, how much you can move it around to make it do what you want it to do, or make the granulation go where you want it to go. So another fun thing we're going to do on this channel is I like to make my own paints. And part of my order from Jackson's this time was pigments. So I bought some pigments to make my own paints. I've had pigments before. I've made my own paints before, so I do have some made that maybe we'll showcase those next time whenever we do the pigment paint making episode. And it's really fun, especially if you really are into the granulating pigments. It's fun to be able to mix your own color combinations together, or even like with some of these, to be able to look at what color combinations somebody else may have used in their paint colors, and then to try and see if you can mimic it without buying one that's already pre-mixed. I mean, because once you learn how to mix your own colors, although I will say some of the pre-mixed colors are just done in such a way that maybe the manufacturer saw to it that one part of their granulating pigments, that they left it coarser than maybe what you can buy on your own or normally what it comes. I mean, there are some reasons to buy granulating, paints, ones that do it on their own. But it's also fun to try and mimic it and figure it out, because also sometimes with these mixed colors, I mean, this isn't a mixed color, this is ultramarine, but it's a lighter version. Our last version was the ultramarine intense. Like I said, when they said intense, I don't know if you can see that, but it is very bright. It is a very bright aquamarine. I mean ultramarine. Why do I keep saying that? So I do expect this one to granulate out. That's typical with the PB29. Next we have Aquarius Red. It's PR 214. So it looks a lot like the Pyro Red, except for a deeper red. It is definitely a deeper red. We'll see what color. Huh. I wonder if that's granulating, because if it's granulating, holy cow, because, that's the thing. A lot of the granulating colors that granulate are not red or yellow. They do have a couple of yellows, or at least one yellow that does granulate. And honestly, the pigment is super hard to find. I haven't been able to find the pigment itself. I've only been able to find it in pre-made paints. So it's the same thing with the red. There aren't a lot of reds that granulate. And this almost looks like it granulates. And that would definitely be fun if it did, because I can think of some really, really fun mixtures for a nice granulating red. So we'll see, fingers crossed. And my last color to swatch is Lemon Yellow, PY61. So definitely a nice nice lemon yellow. It's brighter than the quinacridone yellow. And it's definitely brighter than the nickel azo yellow. So if I were making a three color paint palette, I would probably do lemon yellow, quinacridone, magenta, and this sky blue, which is PB15-3. The other option is PB15-6, but probably PB15-3. And that would be my 3-color palette. And that's because I know if I take that magenta and mix it with the yellow, that I am absolutely going to get red out of that. In fact, I think I have a card sitting here. Alright, so this is not watercolor paper, it's just craft paper. So I'm going to show you. Let's grab this other palette. So if I take my magenta, my PR122, and I mix it with the lemon yellow. Let's make sure we got all the paint off of there, because the pink stains a bit too. You'll definitely get red out of that. So you can make your red, whereas you can't make a magenta once you can't start with red and make magenta out of it. And then sometimes, I know with some of my other colors, and I know you're sitting there thinking, I don't think that's the right color. Nope. So I want to take the PG7, which I don't have my color chart sitting here. I think this one's PG7. So you would think the pink and green will give you some sort of brown, but this will give you a nice lovely blue to a purple color. And I know that's green, and color wise it shouldn't make any sense whatsoever, because you would think, oh, you need to add blue to that to make purple. But in this case, you can actually take your PG7 pigment and mix it with it, and you get this nice purple out of it, and also we were talking blues, so you gotta bear with me because right now I don't know which paints are which in this palette because I don't have them labeled yet. We haven't gotten to that point, so I don't have them labeled, so I don't know which one's which just by looking at them. So I'm saying this one. So here's my blue. And this will also give you a form of purple. That I just thought that was interesting, that those two single pigments together. And the thing is, it usually has to be the quinacridone magenta or a true magenta. It won't work with like an opera pink, because for some reason with the opera pink, I usually end up with mud. So that's kind of nice. And then also, if you mix your lemon yellow, you're gonna start to get your greens on this side. So playing with color, this is also one of my favorite things to do, is just to play around with the paints and not necessarily paint a picture. And you know, you need to do what brings you joy. So this is the end of my video. That's all I'm doing is the swatching for this video. I'm going to do another video probably tomorrow. I have a picture that I'm going to paint using the Roman Szmal colors. I've already got it set up, so this is going to be our picture for tomorrow that I'm going to paint. I'm not sure how much editing I'm going to do on this video, because my thought is not to do any editing. I want to do these more like live streams, and eventually I will get it down to a live stream to where we can have a conversation while I'm painting, because sometimes you just want to know, well, what will the paint do if I do this or if I do that. And I like to experiment with the colors and with the paints, and it's nice to have people along for that journey. So if you can, please subscribe and give me a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Alright, and here is the full color swatch of the Roman Szmal watercolor paints that I have. There's still a couple of colors I would like to purchase, black being one of them, but I am overall satisfied with the way that these paints work, with the way they move on the paper, their properties. The granulating ones are just absolutely gorgeous, especially like after they've dried. I don't know if you can see the color separation over here in the Aquarius green or with the ocean blue, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So I would definitely recommend the Roman Szmal paints. And if you don't want to, you know, go all in on the expensive palette of 24, then just get the classic 5. You know, this is actually a nice little starter set. It's around $15 on Jackson's Art Supply, and it's a good way to get started. I do believe that's all I have for you in this film. And this is kind of added on to the end. I will be painting a picture, which I have already drawn with the Roman Szmal paints, and I will do that more of as a live. I'm not going to do any editing on it. And that's all I have for you. So don't forget to like and subscribe, share. I'm going to put links in the comments for, or in the description for where to purchase these. If you have any questions, absolutely leave me a comment. And everyone have a good day. Goodbye.